Hey everyone, my name is Gwen. I am currently a senior at the UNCSA School of Filmmaking, specifically in the directing program, which is one of the more competitive programs to get into at the school. And as I'm approaching the end of my college career, I thought it would be nice to make a video giving some portfolio tips to incoming applicants. I've divided the video up into two parts. The first is going to talk about portfolio tips and common portfolio mistakes I see young artists make. And the second is going to be actual portfolio creation and what I did to help me create my portfolio. Just a disclaimer before we start the video. I intended this video to be any arts concentration, and I hope that regardless of whatever art program you're going into, you'll get something out of this. But since I am a filmmaker, some of it is going to be more relevant to filmmakers and specifically aimed at filmmakers. So with that out of the way, let's get into the video. This piece of advice is something that I got very early on from a college professor and something that I still take with me to this day. When creating a portfolio, they are not going to judge you based on the best piece of art that's in your portfolio, but rather the worst piece of art that's in your portfolio. This might not seem fair, but there's a logic to it. There is a tendency among young artists to want to just stack their portfolio with as many pieces as possible. I myself almost fell into this trap. The thinking is, it shows that I'm serious, it shows that I'm capable of producing a lot of art, and I worked really hard on all these pieces, therefore they deserve the recognition. The problem is it also shows them that you don't have a critical eye, and you are not capable of curating a collection. Let's look at it like this. Let's say that you have 3 pictures, and you worked really hard on them, and 2 of them are great, they're masterpieces. But the third one isn't quite as good as the others. You kind of know that in your heart, but you still want to include it because you worked really hard on it and it would be a shame not to. But you can see how the photos just don't go together, and a professor will be very quick to pick out that last one. In this way, less is actually more when it comes to your portfolio. So as painful as it is, when you get to that point, when you are trying to decide what should go into your portfolio, try cutting out stuff that isn't absolutely necessary. Alright, this piece of advice applies specifically to writers, more specifically screenwriters, but it could apply to any writer. Screenwriters always want to submit features. They always want to submit features in their portfolio. I totally understand why. It is really hard to write a feature, and you should be very proud of yourself that you did. The problem is the professors just don't have time to read it, and if they can't read it, they can't judge whether or not it's good. You have to remember that on top of all the other applications they're receiving, they also have to read and criticize their own students' work. Now, if you do have a feature screenplay and you're like, no, it's too good, I have to submit it, there's a solution, okay? Take an excerpt of a few scenes from your screenplay. I would say no more than 10 pages. Submit that and put it as excerpts from title of your screenplay here. This is much more manageable for professors, and it also shows them that you value their time. My next piece of advice goes for all arts concentrations, and that is to diversify your portfolio. Don't just lean in really heavily on one art form. Arts professors are always looking for artists who have interests in other arts or even outside of the arts, because good artists draw from influences outside of their concentration and bring it into their work. This next piece of advice is specifically for filmmakers. If you're a filmmaker, but for whatever reason you haven't had the resources to make a film, don't freak out. This isn't actually a death sentence for you not getting into film school. There have been students who have applied to the school I'm currently at who didn't make movies before they applied, and they still got in. It's not the primary factor of what they're looking for. It's understandable that you haven't been able to make a film. Film requires a lot of resources, and especially given the times that we're living in right now with COVID, it's gotten much more difficult. So what can you do if you haven't been able to make a film? Well, here's my advice. Filmmaking is a lot more than just the finished product of the film, right? Filmmaking is screenwriting, it's photography, it's cinematography, it's editing, it's sound design, it's music, it's drawing. There's a lot that goes into making a film. What I would encourage is focusing on one or two specific elements of filmmaking and working on those and then putting that in your portfolio. The important thing is just that you're passionate about it and you show a drive to want to make movies. If they sense that you're not really interested in ever creating a movie, right, they're probably not going to want you in film school. But if you are and you're saying, listen, I am passionate about filmmaking, just haven't had the resources, but look at all these other things I've done, they'll recognize that and they'll accept you. Alright, so on to portfolio creation. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how to make a good portfolio. If I could, I would be rich, and that would be amazing. But what I can do is I can offer you some advice that I wish I had had when I was creating my portfolio and kind of walk you through what I did and what I continue to do now when I'm creating my portfolios. So the first thing I'll say is creating a portfolio isn't easy. Creating a portfolio is really a grind. It takes months to make a good portfolio. It sucks, but that's just kind of how it is. What has helped me is treating it like it's a job and allotting a few hours a day to just doing portfolio stuff. I also similarly like to divide my processes into kind of what I call the first draft stage and then the editing phase. So the first draft stage is what it sounds like. Just focus on creating. Don't focus on whether or not it's good. Just have fun with creating art. Then when you've amassed a few pieces that you're happy with, sit down and go into editing mode and say, okay, which of these are the best pieces in my portfolio? Which of these are going to work together cohesively as sort of a exhibit almost? Like I said, that's just my approach. Every artist has a different approach to how they create, and if you have yours, don't change it, because your voice is what makes you a unique artist. I would also say be aware of overdevelopment during your portfolio. When you get really deep into creating a portfolio, it's very easy to get lost in it. It's also very easy to become overly sensitive to feedback, and I say this because it happens to me all the time. So what can happen is you can start to question your art and question your voice and get into overdevelopment of a piece. If this starts to happen to you, please just walk away for a few days. It's really hard to do because there's kind of this lingering thought in the back of your head of, I have to finish, I have to just keep grinding stuff out, but I promise you, you'll be a lot happier if you walk away, get a fresh perspective, and then come back. Another important resource, which I'm sure you already know about, but just in case you don't, is that you can actually look online, and there are a lot of accepted portfolios on YouTube. Basically, if you look up school name, accepted portfolio, you're going to get a lot of results. For filmmaking in particular, another really cool thing you can do is look up film reels if you're struggling with that, or just to gather inspiration for your own film reel. I still do it to this day. And there are actually a lot of big name professionals who have their reels up on YouTube, so don't be afraid to look at them and draw inspiration. Also, don't be afraid to reach out to professors for any questions. They might not be able to offer you feedback per se, but if you have questions about the portfolio, definitely reach out. They'll be happy to help you. So that pretty much covers my portfolio advice. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out in the comments. I would love to hear how you guys are doing. And thank you guys so much for watching. Good luck applying to art school. You got this.